Hey friends, it's Lauren Taylor. Thank you so much for joining me in my craft room today. It's the last day of the month, which means it's time for some Halloween-ish inspiration, but it's also new release day from Kindred Stamps, and I have the perfect stamp set for today. This is called Unusual Ones. Again, this is a brand new release from Kindred Stamps. I've already stamped and colored my dancing character here, and I'm also going to be using the Spooky Hotel 6x6 paper pad as well as this new Spiderweb die. So we're going to jump right into our card today. I am making a shaker card, and I love this bat paper with it's a black bat on like a soft gray colored background. And so I use my Card Basics die from Kindred Stamps to cut my rectangle background. It's about 4x5 and a quarter, if I can remember off the top of my head. It's smaller than an A2, but it is a nested size of A2. To create my infinity shaker panel, I'm cutting down this piece of packaging that I have. I just have like a pile of these little plastic bags that I don't need anymore, so I can use them for shaker cards. So I just cut the packaging. It's larger than I need, and I will trim it down in just a minute. But in order to have good placement, I'm going to go ahead and attach one side of my infinity shaker. I tend to do the bottom of whatever shape I'm doing. And I'm going to leave about a half an inch of this plastic packaging on the left and bottom side. It worked out to have about a half an inch on the top, but I have a much wider leftover piece on the right side, but that's okay. I'm going to trim it. And once I have adhered down my plastic on the bottom side of my rectangle here, I'm trimming off that excess off the right side, so that way it will be about a half an inch there as well. And I also trim some angled cuts where the corners are of my plastic packaging, so that way the plastic doesn't overlap and become like really bulky in the corners. So I have one side done, so let's do two more sides. This time I'm doing the right and the left side, and I'm applying some 1/4 inch adhesive and just using a block to help me tear it faster. And I'll go ahead and pick up the release paper and glue down the side plastic pieces to the back side of my panel. I'm just using my little bone folder scoring tool to make sure there's a really good adhesion between my adhesive strip and my plastic packaging. This is an old Sparkle Blends mix. I'm sorry that they are no longer open, but you can pick your favorite black and white mix or anything else that inspires you from this particular fandom. This mix has black and white, it has spider webs, bats, spiders, awesome things to include for the theme of this card. And once I have all of the shaker bits that I want on the inside, I'm going to make sure it's as flat as I can get it to be. And I added some adhesive to that final side, and I'm closing up my shaker. I'm going to give it a good few shakes and make sure nothing is escaping out of my shaker panel. I'm going to be gluing this down to an A2 size card base. It's top folding, which is my favorite, but if you're recreating this card, use whatever size you are most comfortable with. And I die cut this black spider web, and I'm going to apply it to the bottom of my card. I want it to kind of come up from the bottom to have a grounding look for my scene. So I die cut it out with some black cardstock. It's not the full die, as you can see. I didn't get the edges, but I'm going to be trimming it down, so not a big deal. And I'm using some strong glue to add my shaker panel to my background piece. I was thinking about adding in another piece of pattern paper, but I'm going to go with the white card base behind my shaker panel because everything I'm doing today is very black and white, so I think it's fitting. And my black spider web piece here is going to overlap on the bottom just a bit, and it will add some more color, I guess you could say, or lack of color, to the bottom part of my card. I applied down some thin foam strips that just fit perfectly in between my panel and the bottom of my card. and then using my grid mat to help me center that spiderweb piece to the bottom of the card. So now it's adhered to my card base just on that bottom part where I had the foam adhesive. So now I'm going to just use my wet glue with a fine point tip to glue down my spiderweb where it touches the panel on the right side, or I guess I should say the card base on the right side. So that little sliver of white. So I'm just gluing that down, and I'm going to repeat that on the other side as well. Once both sides are glued and the glue is dry, I'm going to go ahead and grab some large scissors and just trim off the excess so it will end and be flush with the sides of my card. That's going to pretty much finish up my background, but I wanted to add a little bit more behind my dancing character. I think she looks really cute without anything behind her, but she gets really lost in that busy background and the shaker bits. So I'm going to die cut a circle. I found this gray colored cardstock that I thought matched well with everything that I've got going on this card, but I wanted to add a little bit of fun to my cardstock, so I'm going to create my own background using this hand character from this fandom, and I'm going to create my own repeating background. So just using some black ink, and I'm twisting the stamp so that way it's in different directions all over this gray circle, and I have my own hand background. After I clean up my ink mess, I'm going to glue my circle to my card base using that same adhesive that I had before. I'm going to glue it pretty center to my card background. It feels a little off-centered because I have the spider web underneath it, but it is pretty centered to the card, maybe a little bit higher up than the center. I'm going to add foam adhesive behind my dancing character here, and I'll pull off the release paper, and I'm going to glue her center to my circle. So she looks pretty centered here. I guess the more I look at it, she is a little bit higher up than down. So the circle is not quite centered, a little more up. And I'm going to stamp my sentiment on some white cardstock. Of course, I get ink everywhere. And I stamped the sentiment, "Dance your way through bad days." And it was pretty straight to the bottom side of this white piece of cardstock as well as on the right. So I'm just trimming off the top and left to match. And that way I have a nice rectangle cut around my sentiment. And I'm going to grab more foam adhesive and glue this underneath my dancing girl, so that way there is a fun little sentiment on the front of the card. So once I get that glued down to the back side of my sentiment strip, I went ahead and peeled off the release paper, and then using my grid mat to do my best to center that onto the card. So here is a final look at my shaker card featuring the brand new stamp set, Unusual Ones from Kindred Stamps. I did make 2 other cards to show off the new release. Here I have these 2 roommates, and I used my hot foil plate with 2 different foils to kind of show a colorful side and a black and white side. And then I have my unusual family here in front of a spooky house just to create a fun, I guess, Halloween inspired scene. Here's a close-up look at my shaker card, as well as a close-up look at my other cards, all 3 all together. But I hope you'll check out the new release from Kindred Stamps today. There's a lot of really cool new stamp sets and products. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll click like, and if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe and come back. As always, you can find everything I use down below in the description box. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye!